Hey everyone, happy Saturday. It is Helene from Virtual Veg Fest Live, and we want to thank the Plant Based Network for being our partner, and of course, to Follow Your Heart for sponsoring our live talks this week. If you haven't subscribed to Virtual Veg Fest on YouTube yet, please do. We have a really cool contest going on. If you subscribe, we will enter you to win a prize from either Follow Your Heart, Crofters Organics, Hodo Foods, or Sun Warrior. They have some really cool prize packs that we will be able to give away at the end of the month to 4 lucky winners who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. And please don't forget to shop on virtualvegfest.com, where you can watch these talks and you can shop. So I heard somebody yelling in my house. I'm not sure why. So you can shop and support Virtual Veg Fest and help us all get through this. Today, we have another cooking demo, which I'm really excited about. We have Robin all the way from Minneapolis in her kitchen, ready to teach you how to do your vegan toolkit. Now, we all if you like to cook like me and you want to learn how to include and introduce flavor in your food and get an umami type taste and flavoring, well, how do you do that? What do you use? What kind of ingredients do you need to make that happen? Well, Robin's going to help us with that today and teach all of us from her kitchen. The only thing about these cooking demos that is bad is that you don't get to taste the food. Robin has to taste it and tell us how good it is. Now, a little bit about Robin. From what I've learned, we've spent some time on the phone. We spent some time practicing, making sure the technical part of this cooking demo is going to work. She is a cookbook author. She is vegan. She has multiple books ranging from desserts to juicing to pasta to just a big vegan book. And one of the cool things is you can go to virtualvegfest.com and buy her books after this talk. So if you like something that you see or something that you hear and you want to make it for yourself, go buy the books. Now, if you are watching, remember you can ask questions and you can comment, and we'll see them on the side, and I'll make sure I bring it to Robin's attention because she can't really see the comments because we're working on phones. But I will make sure that she responds. So I'm going to throw this at Robin so she can tell you a little bit more about herself before we start and we delve into this cooking demo. So, hey, welcome, Robin.
Hi, everybody out in virtual vegan world. So, yeah, I'm Robin Asbell. I've written 12 cookbooks now, although the latest one isn't out yet. I'm the author of Big Vegan, which is for sale on the Triangle Veg Fest website. And that's where this recipe that we're doing today, these recipes for today are from this, or at least one of them is. And then I'm also the author of this vegan meal prep book. And I wrote a book about plant-based meats, where it's just how to make your own plant-based meats at home. And it gives you a lot more control over how they turn out. So one of the big things that I tried to work on in Big Vegan was to give people a vegan toolkit, as I say. It's one thing to say, oh, I want to eat more plants, and we've all heard it, right? It's, oh, well, I it's a bunch of salad, right? Or I ate a vegan meal and, I was hungry an hour later, or it just wasn't satisfying. So there is a chemistry and a physiology behind this that you can use to make your food more satisfying. And so there are a lot of different methods in cooking, but the one I'm going to focus on right now is adding umami. So umami is a Japanese word meaning a sense of meatiness or a mouth-filling, satisfying quality. And so Japanese cooks are very attuned to this because they've known about it for years and years and years, and we've only been really talking about it in this country for, 15 years or so. So it's something that we can learn a great deal from them. So what it is that there are amino acids in proteins which are keyed in. You are keyed in physically and psychologically to crave them. It's a survival instinct to need to eat food with protein in it, so you want to eat foods that are satisfying with umami. So if you aren't eating meat, obviously, then you need to figure out, is there a way to get those from plants? And in fact, there is. There are many really cool chemicals in plants that we can use to make delicious umami-rich food. So I'm going to show you a whole array of these. So to start with, I'm going to start making a broth. Now some of the umami ingredients, the number one umami ingredient from which all of them come, or the beginning of us understanding them, is kombu. It's a kind of seaweed that has naturally occurring glutamates. So I'm going to put this in this pot of water and put the water on the stove, and I've got 4 slices of ginger, and I've got this bag of black mushrooms. So you can get these really cheaply at the Asian grocery if you've got one near you, or you can buy other dried mushrooms. And throw in 4 of those and put this on kind of low heat because I just want it to steep. I don't want it to boil. So the next stage is I'm going to start making this pasta.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay, great. All right. So for the pasta, I've got all these ingredients. So my umami is going to come from a couple of things. So we've got miso. Miso is fermented soy. Any fermented protein is going to have the amino acids, right? The proteins I was talking about. And then fermenting it breaks them apart so that you can taste them, because you have these sensors on your tongue for them. So miso is a profound umami carrier. Tamari, which we're going to put in the soup. Believe it or not, this is white tea, which I'm going to put in this broth. Tea has umami. Anything smoked has umami. Ripe vegetables have more umami than unripe vegetables. And dry vegetables, so you'll see that a lot in Japanese cooking, that they really like dried mushrooms and dried vegetables, even dried radishes, dried daikon, and it's because drying it concentrates the umami chemicals. So it's really this, it's just after you learn a few of these things, they become kind of second nature. So another ingredient that has umami is wine, fermented. A lot of fermenting. So if you're into, if you want to get into eating fermented foods, they're really good for you, right? Kimchi and raw sauerkraut have beneficial bacteria, so they're absolutely great for your gut health and everything, but they also have umami. Another umami ingredient we're going to use in this one is tomato paste, which is ripe tomatoes that have been concentrated. So it adds a lot of umami. Then, of course, the vegan favorite ingredient, we've got our nooch. Nutritional yeast is, again, it's got all these proteins in it, so it's packed with umami, and that's why people say it has a cheesy taste. So in this dish, I'm going to crank up my burner. Alrighty. You think you have this stuff set up. There we go. So I've got my pan on high heat, and I'm going to mix together. I have some seitan, which is of course wheat gluten. Now you could do this dish with tofu or something else gluten-free. And I'm just going to tear this because I like to tear it so that it has more of a sort of natural looking texture than if it's sliced.
Did you make that?
You can. I do, and actually in my book I have recipes for making all kinds of seitan, but this one I'm using store-bought.
Okay.
For today, since that's what you guys can get. So I've got some regular white flour, and what I do is I actually take those dry mushrooms put them in a spice grinder and grind them up. So I'm going to put in the equivalent of about 4 mushrooms, or a couple. See, I've just got a little bit of dried mushroom powder. Again, dry mushrooms, super umami. And I'm just mixing that up. And then I put it all over, see this seitan, so it's coated. And so my pan's gotten nice and hot. So the flour and the mushroom powder are going to get toasted in the pan, and they're also going to serve as a thickener. So I'm going to put some oil in there. Down a little bit. And into the pan goes the seitan with the dry mushrooms. And I'm going to put in some sliced shiitakes. So this is even more. I mean, it's just mushroom, mushroom, mushroom. It's called triple mushroom fettuccine. So in go the sliced shiitakes. And we're going to stir that over medium-high heat. You just don't want the flour. You want the flour to toast but not burn. And I'm going to put in a little garlic in a second. I don't like my garlic to burn either. So the next step of this is I'm going to take, and always get unsweetened. So this is unsweetened almond milk. And I'm adding in the white wine, the tomato paste, the nutritional yeast. Oh, I gotta remember to stir. I love the sound of mushrooms squeaking. We're going to get that too with the portobellos that go on top. So I've got that, and then I've got a pinch each of turmeric, cayenne, and nutmeg. Just a pinch. And some salt. Oh, and then the white miso. And the thing with a sauce like this, we're just putting in a teaspoon. You don't want to taste the miso really as much as just have it in the background. So this is getting seared up. And I'm going to quickly throw in the garlic. Again, just get that lightly cooked. And then I will just gradually work in the almond milk mixture. And get that heat down on low. And really, that's kind of about all that's going to happen there. So we can go ahead and let that come to a simmer. I'll turn it up a tiny bit. And I'll go ahead and start cooking the pasta. Go in this. In it goes. And to remember this, I am going to set a timer. always salt your pasta water so that the pasta will be seasoned. And then I'll just keep stirring this sauce. And the one final thing, there's a couple things that are going in this, but I also have some fresh basil, which I washed and then rolled up in a paper towel. That's a good little trick for keeping your herbs nice, is you can get your fresh herbs, wash them, roll them up in a paper towel, and you can even do that a couple days ahead of time and put it in a zip top bag.
So Robin, I'll interject for a second. For
Yes.
people who like me, who are gluten-free, one of the things you can do is you can use organic cornstarch instead of flour to coat,
you know what?
Tofu.
Yes, and actually, I also teach a lot of gluten-free classes and wrote a book about how to make gluten-free pasta. So I do a lot of this, and so what I would recommend is using white rice flour instead of the flour that I tossed the seitan in. And of course, instead of seitan, you want to use tofu or some other gluten-free product.
Like tempeh tofu.
Tempeh tofu.
Yep.
For that matter, you know, you could make the sauce and just cook the shiitakes, you know, with the rice flour and the dried mushrooms, and even just add a can of beans at the end.
Yep.
That would be. So I've got some fresh basil just picked out of the garden. I wish you could smell it. Yum, yum, yum. So
Ellen said that she's doing some cooking for the week ahead. Ellen Canner, your friend. It's fun to have you both in the kitchen with me, even virtually, which is awesome.
I wish we were in the same kitchen. So I will keep going with cooking the pasta. And so right now, my miso broth is just quietly steeping. So I've just got it on kind of medium-low, and the kombu is softening, and the shiitakes are just sort of floating there. But that is what we want. We just want to have, you see, you don't want to really boil kombu. It makes it bitter. So kombu is fantastic stuff. So this has come to a boil. I'm just going to cook it a little bit more so that it will thicken up. And then I'm going to take it off the heat and trade pans that are over here.
Robin, Pamela asked if you could do this oil free. It's her first time watching. So thank you, Pamela, for joining us. And I would say you definitely could do this oil free because you just have to saute with water instead of oil when you started.
Yeah, I would actually, what I would do to do this oil free is mix the flour, whether you're using the rice or the wheat flour, with the liquids instead of putting them in the pan, because if you do them with the water, it's not going to be the same.
Sure.
It's not going to be a roux, as we call it. So it would be better if you just kind of put those in a different order, but you absolutely can. Absolutely. So I'm going to now shift this pan and not spill hot sauce over myself. There we go. And I'm going to shift over to my cast iron. And we'll have to let that heat up a little bit. And I'm going to throw the basil on the other sauce. Just let that keep warm on the back burner there. So for this one, I'm going to sliver up these portobellos. And I'm going to just pop the stems out. And thinly slice. So this is actually going to be the topping for the pasta, and so it looks really dramatic to have these seared slices on top. So I know mushrooms are not your thing, but for anyone else, the mushroom chemistry, mushroom structure is very interesting. You know, you look at this slice of mushroom, and it's really, you know, it's dry to the touch and kind of firm. But what these really are is they, you know, they have a firm cellulose structure and a lot of liquid inside. And so the way that you cook them really changes the way they come out. Like, say, if I were to put these in on low heat, they would just get sloppy wet, right? And all this water would come out, and then it would, if you left them long enough, it would evaporate, and you'd get something really dark and shrunken. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sear them like the meat of the vegetable world, and then I'm going to have these sort of firmer slices. I don't need all of these. And then they're going to have that sort of meaty texture. Again, a lot of this is about trying to get people who are not vegetarians to eat vegan food. So I do a lot of that. People hire me to cook for them, and they want to learn how to like this kind of food when they miss meat. Now, I haven't eaten meat since 1980, so I don't miss it, but I do a lot of this, you know, chemistry stuff and trying to sort of engineer things that seem meaty, but, you know, it isn't necessarily that they're really like meat. Okay, so this is nice and hot, and I'm going to drop these slices of portobello in there. I don't know if you can hear the sizzle.
We can.
And there's going to be some squeaking. So when I was talking about the mushroom squeaking, that is that cellulose structure. You know, it's like these are these little rooms, tiny cells that have liquid in them. And when they hit that hot pan, it starts to steam inside. And everything starts to kind of squeak in the pan. So that's happening. And now I'm going to check on my pasta. I'm not going to throw it at the wall. That's one of those old, I guess it works, but really, why not just bite it? Yep, just a little bit longer, very close though. So the mushrooms are searing. And turning wonderfully meaty. You want to give them time to actually get browned, and they'll shrink. Push this up and out of the way. And let them get a little more brown. So yes, the world of mushrooms is a very fascinating thing. I've gone morel. Here we can go morel hunting. We did that this spring. It's an amazing and delicious mushroom. And I don't know if any of you have tried. There's this fabulous, they call it mushroom jerky, where it's thin slices that have been dried and made a little bit smoky. Just wonderful.
Now, one of the cool things about the sauce that you made that went into all those mushrooms and the seitan is that sauce is versatile and can be used pretty much in any pasta dish or with any vegetables. And you can probably flavor it to go in different directions: Italian, Mexican, curry.
Absolutely. Just gonna clean this out a little bit. Yes, it's a kind of a universal idea, you know, a little flour, little liquid. So I'm going to turn this off and drain the pasta.
For the best pot ever. Don't have to pour any water.
I got this just for using on camera. So I wouldn't have to walk over to the sink and strain. So now I'm going to just dump it right into that pan with the sauce, because that is how everybody does it. Right? And
Exactly.
I'm going to mix it up and put it into a lovely pan. So I'll move this over here where you can see. So here is my pasta in the mushroom sauce. So creamy. You know, and this is one of the things, you know, I talk about people missing meat, but I think what we often run into is people missing cheese, right? Is people miss dairy, people miss rich, creamy food. So it's really, I do a lot of things like this too, is creamy sauces that give you all that. Oh, I can't tell you how good this smells if you were here. The mushrooms and the basil and all of that. So I'm putting it right into a serving dish. Mushroom. So it's called triple mushroom fettuccine because it has the shiitakes and the dried mushrooms. And now the final stroke of mushroom is these seared slices, and you can see they are quite golden brown. And you put those on top, and you've got yourself an umami bomb, as we say. Get that out of the way, because then the final thing, which again, also people are so used to putting cheese on things, I'll just go ahead and gild the lily with some chopped walnuts. And I just find that, you know, people who look at that and say, boy, I would like to have some Parmesan cheese on there, they will look at it and say, oh, look, there's nuts on there. So, and I realize some of you may not eat nuts, and that can also be absolutely done a different way as well. So here we go. I'm going to just serve some in this pasta bowl. And you just twirl that, twirl, make it look pretty, and make sure we get some deliciousness on there. And a few of these seared mushrooms right on top to make sure you get the gist of the whole mushroom experience. And a few little walnuts. And voila, we have triple mushroom fettuccine, exercise in umami and building flavor. So absolutely worth a try. I hope that you will try this at home. And I'll just set this down. So yes, that's our umami dish number one. So now I'm going to take a look at what's going on with my stock. So back here on low heat, we've had our kombu just quietly hydrating, and the mushrooms and the ginger. And so I'll go ahead and put this on this burner. And because we don't want to boil the kombu, we just go ahead and take it out. Now, if you want to, you can chop this up and eat it, but at this point it's considered to have given up its essence. And I'll bring this up to more of a simmer so that these vegetables can kind of get infused more than the kombu did. So the other ingredients for this dish are miso, white miso, and tamari. And I've got the white tea is inside this infuser ball. So this is like a jumbo version of the tea infuser ball. And these are just a neat thing because you can put different herbs or different things in there and throw this into a simmering soup or something and just get a little herbal flavor or tea flavor into something without having the physical presence of the tea. You just then take it right out. So that's really fun. And then I went to the farmer's market today to get some really fun vegetables. So I've got scallions, and I got this pretty little yellow golden zephyr squash, and a medley of green and purple green beans. And this gnarly looking beet on the inside is actually a striped beet. This is a shioga beet. And so I'm going to cut these slices. I slice this up into thin slices, which I'm then going to stack and cut into quarters so that we can put it into the soup at the end. So this soup is based on a clear broth, which would be made actually in a Buddhist application, and sometimes it's sort of riffing on the idea of kaiseki, which is a fairly ritualized way of eating, but the idea being that we can make this broth and have it be a clear, plain broth, but we're going to infuse all this flavor and umami into it, and it's going to look very plain and taste great. And then the vegetables will be the stars of the show. So that's why you want to make sure you have the freshest, best vegetables. So I've got my little green beans and my pretty radishes. And I'm going to cut up a little bit of this yellow squash. And compost all the trims. And I will just turn this sideways and cut it into quarters. Again, you want to have pretty little slices. I love yellow squash, and it's so fragile. You really kind of have to cook it within a couple of days of getting it. But this one's just gorgeous. Just has that crispy, supple texture that we like, which you can only get when it's really in season in the summer. And then for a garnish for this, again at the farmer's market, I picked up these gorgeous pea shoots. And these I buy from a sprouter. These are these beautiful pea tips. And I used to put these in dishes when I was cooking for a family. And the little girl tried them and she said, "Oh, it's a leaf that tastes like a pea." And I said, "You're absolutely right. It is. It's a leaf that tastes just like a pea." So it's a great and delicious thing to put into, as a garnish for this soup. So I've got my stuff is coming up to a slight simmer. You can just sort of see the bubbles are getting going. And I'm going to set a timer for 4 minutes because I'm going to add that white tea. And so, white tea is actually sort of, not a lot of people really understand what white tea is, but it's closer to black tea than to green tea. It's just very light colored. And if you take a look at it, it's not that it's white, really. It's got some black and some green leaves in there. But it's milder. It's very mild, as opposed to black tea, which has a lot of tannins. So the white tea is going to give it the umami, the tea umami, and then it's going to, but not give it a super strong tea taste. Because, you don't want it to be like, oh, I'm drinking hot tea when it's really soup. Okay, so this has come to a boil. So I'm going to whisk in this white miso. And I know it's sort of taken my life in my hands because you usually want to stir this in a dish with some water. But there's not a lot of stuff in here, so I'm going to be able to get it to break up. There we go. So we've got our white miso, shiitake mushrooms, ginger, and now I'm going to drop in the tea and let that steep for 4 minutes. And then I will strain that. So I'm going to get these vegetables. Now you may notice I am putting these guys in different piles. And that's because you want to always add the hard vegetables a little bit sooner. So I'm going to put, when this is all ready, I'm going to put these in, let them cook for a minute or so. Then add the second group, which are the softer vegetables. And then the last thing I'll add will be the scallions and the pea shoots. So pea shoots I would just put in the bowl when we serve it. So I'm infusing the tea. And here is my strainer that I'm going to use. So let's see, any questions?
Okay. So Pamela also asked if she can get the recipes that we're doing today.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to email me at robin@robinasbell.com or go to my website, robinasbell.com, and just go to the contact. So it's just my name.com. Contact me and I would happily send them to you. That would be lovely. And like I say, the one is in the Big Vegan Book, which is one of my most successful books that it's still in print several years later and still selling well. And it's the one I use the most. So here we go, almost just 2 more minutes. So the thing about this miso broth is that it can be done seasonally, which is again another aspect of Japanese cuisine that they really value seasonality, and I think that's one of the things I enjoy learning from them. So they only eat the finest, best, fresh things, or that's the aesthetic, that you would value the fresh things that are in season, which is why I'm a big farmer's market shopper. I want to get something that's in season and just picked. So with this, I went and got these things that are just in season, just picked. But say in the fall, I could do this very same recipe and I could use chunks of kabocha squash or sweet potato or, late summer vegetables that would be more fitting. And I'm fine with even sweet corn, whatever is good and fresh and local. And I have a friend who is a Japanese food expert, Elizabeth Ando, who lives in Japan, and I've talked to her about this, and she said, oh yeah, it's not that you should go out of your way to go buy exotic vegetables imported from somewhere, right? So if I were to go to my store and try to find an exotic Japanese vegetable, that's not really in tune. The aesthetic is to eat what's good where you are in season. So I would and in the wintertime, see this we used white miso, but in the wintertime you could use a darker miso, which would have more oomph. You know, it'd be darker and a little bit weightier. So that's sort of a thing. If you are looking at misos and you aren't really sure which ones to get, just white is the mildest and the least salty. And then the darker they get, you know, from red to brown up to, there's one called Hacho miso, which is the funkiest, darkest, brownest miso, and it's delicious. It's fantastic. So it's really a winter miso for sure. So my timer went off, and so I'm getting my white tea out. And so now I'm going to strain this broth into a clear glass measuring cup. And the next step, if I were going to do this absolutely the right way, I would put this in the refrigerator and let this, actually the solids would all fall to the bottom and I could pour off a clear liquid. So we don't really have time to wait for a few hours, right? So we're going to go ahead and use this the way that it is. It's a delicious, oh, if you could smell it, the brew. So I'm going to bring it back up to a simmer again. So this is just a big pot full of umami broth. Oh, it smells so good. Wish you had smell-o-rama, right?
I know. One thing, Robin, I think your stove is still on, that you had the pot on low.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Is it? You're good?
nope, it's good.
Okay, good. I
Everything's
just want to
off.
make sure.
No, I know. You don't want to. Thank you for
You're
having an eye out behind me.
You're a gas stove. It's let's make sure that's off. So
Let's
if anyone
make
has any
sure.
questions or comments, please feel free to ask, because
Feel free.
we've just seen a umami type pasta dish with lots of mushrooms and a creamy sauce, and now a miso soup is brewing, literally.
It's coming into fruition.
Yes.
So yes, as soon as this is coming to a simmer, I'm going to go ahead and I will add the hard vegetables, right? So I'll put in the green beans and the beets, the chioga beets, and let those simmer a little bit. But I definitely want to get that cranked up. So after we're done with this, and you know all about umami, oh, that's right, I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of tamari in there too. Woo-hoo. You will also, it's also good to learn a few other parts of your vegan toolkit, right? So some of the tricks that I use are things like reduction. And you'd say, well, what is that? Well, if you're cooking, say, something and you've made a soup or you're making a sauce, you can put some liquids in there. Now, classically, it'd be like, say, wine, vegetable stock, and then cook it down by boiling it. And by boiling it, you remove flavorless water, right? The water leaves in the form of steam and leaves behind flavor. Another thing that happens when you're doing that is if you use, as I use the wine, when you put alcohol in with food, I know some people don't want alcohol, but alcohol is a solvent. So alcohol breaks out a lot of flavor molecules. That's why it's so good when you put, wine or even vodka in tomato sauce, because the alcohol actually has a chemistry with the vegetables where it breaks open these things and makes them more flavorful. So you put in the alcohol and then you boil it, and the alcohol leaves, but the flavor stays. So that's one way to get a lot of flavor into plants. Because when you think about it, you know, this vegetable is a very simple thing. It's got fiber, it's got fluids, it's set in one place, and it's actually contains far fewer chemicals than are in a piece of meat, because that was, you know, a leg, it walked around, it had a lot of things going on. So it isn't that you want that, but it's just that if you can build more complexity into plant foods, they're going to be more interesting and satisfying to your palate. And it's a subconscious thing, you crave it. So these little vegetables, the more of them that we can amp up, the better.
Right. And
So
let's not forget that all those vegetables also have protein in them, because people don't think that way. They all have protein. And then Pamela asked about the umami flavor that Trader Joe's sells. You can get a spice, an umami spice, and what you think about that.
You know, I don't actually shop at Trader Joe's. Nothing against it. It's just not near me. But I would imagine that they've done kind of a similar thing. I've seen other things that had umami in them. So, and I remember a lot of the times what people use to get umami are fish sauce and, you know, animal-based things. So as long as it's a vegetarian umami, it's probably going to have a lot of the same kind of things in it that this does, just made into a powder. But again, I don't really know.
I'm pretty sure it has mushroom powder in it.
Yeah.
Again, something that wouldn't be in my house, but yes, it has mushroom. I'm pretty sure it has that to add to that flavor. And in case you don't know, I mean, I've kind of hinted at it. I don't eat mushrooms at all. They're not even allowed in my house. So when Robin told me this was like her menu, I was like, this is like the antithesis of anything I would eat or have, because they're just not my thing. But they are a lot of other people's things. So this is pretty humorous for me or anyone who knows me really well that's watching to know, like, nope, would never eat this. But there are ways I could take some of this and make Helene friendly, so that I would, like the sauce, the pasta, I can easily make that. I would probably use my Vitamix to mix it up and not have the flour. I might replace it with cashews and make more of a cashew cream sauce and throw that into pasta. Use tofu, tempeh, vegetables, beans. Vegan cooking is versatile. You don't like beets. Okay, well, don't use beets. Use green zucchini, use eggplant, which is another very umami type vegetable.
Umami, and that's the funny thing, is that there are people who despise eggplant as well. You know, it's funny because my husband actually, I think we were married for 20 years before he admitted he didn't like mushrooms. And I said, why didn't you tell me? And he said, well, I kept thinking it would get better. Just kept giving it another try. And same thing with eggplant, you know. And so it's, and for a long time, I've been in this healthy eating business, you know, since the 1980s. And I have eaten a lot of weird things because they were supposed to be good for me. And some time back, I swore off on ever eating anything I didn't like. You know, I'm not going to choke down some weird thing in a smoothie that I hate the taste of just because it's supposed to be good for me, right? So that's my philosophy, is if you don't like it, there are plenty of things that are really, really good for you that you do like, I'm sure.
Yes.
So that's been simmering a little bit. So I'm going to put in this squash. Because, people will say, oh, well, don't you miss this and don't you miss that? And I say, no, I am eating great food every day. I don't have time or room, to eat everything I want to eat. That's good. That's good, healthy food. Why would I waste time? Life is too short to eat bad food. And so you just want to eat food. There's so many things that are so delicious that aren't don't have ill effects and don't cause cruelty. So why not just steer that away. You know, it's not about giving something up. And I certainly, you know, people, and I'm sure all of you know, you get people who think that you must really miss it and crave it. And I have no, I don't. So it's just an interesting phenomenon that it's just a mindset of saying it isn't about what I'm giving up, it's about what I'm getting.
Yep.
So I'm getting more of these delicious things that I love anyway. You know, what could be better than a perfect pear or, you know, a beautiful pasta dish like this? I just think it's absolutely wonderful, and you feel good afterwards. It isn't, you don't leave there thinking, oh, you know, whatever it is. I don't know how people feel after they leave McDonald's, but I don't think it's good.
No, I agree with you. And with the pasta, with the fettuccine, it is like an Alfredo sauce. However, it's not as heavy, it's not as dense. It is healthier than, it definitely has more flavor because typically an Alfredo sauce is more
Just
cream,
Yeah.
lots of cream, and that has wine and the miso and the the nutritional
Yes.
yeast, which
So yeah, we built in, again, it was building in complexity that, you know, is not in almond milk, you know, but would be in a dairy product or a meat product. So yeah, you can do it. You can get your toolkit out and you can make it just as good, just as satisfying.
exactly. And like we keep saying, there's so many different ways to do all these things. And I'm someone that went vegetarian when I was 19 and didn't like any vegetables except for peas, corn, carrots, and like iceberg lettuce and onion. That's the only vegetables I liked. I learned to like them after going vegetarian for so many years that I mean, zucchini, broccoli, it was not stuff I ate. And the mushrooms never, ever, ever worked. But, broccoli, zucchini, squash, I mean, so many other things. Brussels sprouts, yum, cabbage. I mean, all these delicious, delicious foods that are open to are for anybody because everyone has to remember that an apple is vegan. It's plant-based
That's
too. So
when someone says to you, well, I don't like vegan food, say, well, have you ever had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
right. Right.
You know,
Exactly.
it could certainly, you know, and so the other analogy that I make is if you're eating, you know, the standard American diet, the SAD diet with all the meat and all the, it is like loud music on volume 11. You have to stop eating that, you know, like Doritos, super flavor, crazy, the way that those foods have been engineered to just overwhelm your mouth. If you stop eating those and you turn the volume down, you can hear and taste the subtle nuances in these plant foods. And suddenly they seem louder because they're not being drowned out by whatever
Salt.
it is.
It's salt,
Yeah.
usually the sodium, and not being drowned out by sodium, and you can actually taste flavors in your food as opposed to just tasting salty food like a Dorito, right?
And all that, they put all the weird additives and, you know, and again, with the meat, there's a lot of stuff in there that's just really complicated. So it's just get simpler and you'll be able to taste more.
Yes, that's a very polite way to put that, complicated.
Yes, so my vegetables are tender. So I'm going to put them in a bowl. Of course, I have a beautiful black bowl. And I'm going to put a few little scallions on the top. And I've got my pea shoots. And if it hadn't been so hot, I'd have some nasturtium flowers from my front flower box. Let's see, so here we go. We have our beautiful soup. And once you make this broth, you can use it to cook anything, right? People are always looking at recipes and it says use chicken stock. Well, you've got umami stock now. So you can make this broth This is all this complexity and wonderful flavor, and then use it to cook things. So here's a lovely, I wish you could taste it. This looks like this little bowl of vegetables, but as you know, a lot of magic went in there. And we can just really give it a, you know, it's got all kinds of yummy, yummy, yummy flavors. And whenever I'm eating soup, I'm reminded of a very successful book about weight loss. And I know a lot of people are interested in that. It was called Volumetrics. The idea is that you're going to eat the same volume of food at every meal, no matter what the food is. That's why eating vegetables instead of animal foods generally makes people leaner. There's a lot of reasons, but so if I eat 2 cups of this, I'm going to be just as full as if I ate an entire hamburger.
Yes.
And clearly, this is going to be much lighter. So that if you eat foods that have a lot of water in them, including the water in this soup, you will be full and not have so many calories. So that's a real bonus with this kind of eating, because you know you can eat more plants. You're getting all this fiber that fills you up. You're getting all this water. And right about now, everybody's sweating it all out, so we need to eat more water in our food anyway. And we're staying really full and staying a little leaner. Because yes, statistically speaking, people who eat plant-based diets are generally leaner. We have a better waist to hip circumference. Oh, I hear your puppy. So yes, does anyone have any questions about miso soup?
UPS is here, so I will definitely be having some barking dogs. But I mean, you could definitely throw tofu into that soup really easily, and it would just
Oh yes.
And you can see the darkness in the broth, which is all that flavor that you're talking about. All that umami is in the darkness of that broth. If everyone remembers who's been watching from the beginning, that was just clear water. Clear water on the stove.
Just water and some seaweed. Yep. Magic of seaweed. Because yeah, that's where it all umami kind of was discovered, was from the kombu. And so that's where we understand this whole appeal. So it's one of the awesome things about Japanese food, again, that they've given us. So even though you don't eat the fish from the sushi anymore, you can still enjoy the Japanese food. So, and make your own miso soup, because the one they make at the sushi place has fish in the broth, sadly. But yes, I would put some silken tofu in this. Let's just get the Morinu box of the extra firm silken tofu and cut that into small cubes and just drop them in. You don't even really have to cook them. So you just can drop them in and let them warm in the broth. And then they just sort of melt in your mouth. Don't even have to chew.
That's perfect. So you just keep going, Robin. I'll be like another 30 seconds.
She's got the UPS driver. So the other elements of our toolbox, aside from reduction and umami, is another thing that you can really, I'm really, really into, is caramelization. So caramelization is a magical thing where you take an onion, the cheapest, most low little food. It's just a root vegetable that you can get anywhere. And if you chop it up and cook it in fat, although you can I'm not sure, I don't think you can really do it just in water alone. Sorry,
you can. You actually can caramelize onions in water. You can do it. Low heat with the water. The natural sweetness of the onion. Yep, natural sweetness of the onion will caramelize them. So just letting
So you can just put it in a pan, and you want to, you know, I learned this from a French chef when I was working in a restaurant, and I had never heard of such a thing. And she said, go put all these onions in a pan with a block of butter and stir, stir, stir over low heat. And I kept going and taking the pan to her, and she'd say, nope, not done. And this went on for 4 hours. but I ended up with this huge pot full of onions turning into this thing that was the color of, honestly, those little caramels that you unwrap at Halloween. And it's tiny. I mean, it really gets down to 1/10 of its size, and it was as sweet as candy. And it was one of those life-changing moments of just, whoa, just time and heat had turned these onions into this thing. And so I often make them as a prep item, is I just low and slow. Anytime you're around the kitchen, you can just throw them on the stove, stir them up till they get sort of soft, over sort of medium high, and then turn it down to low. And I tell you, I write recipes. I develop recipes for a living. And every editor says, 45 minutes? Don't you mean 4-5? Or, you can't go that long. You just can't. So I just refuse to call it caramelized if it hasn't been at least an hour, at least 45 minutes. So, because you'll see things in restaurants where they'll say, oh, we're going to put caramelized onions on your food, and they're not really. So do it the real way at least once, just to see what I'm talking about. Just put it on low heat for 2-3 hours and just keep stirring. Now you can make it as a prep item in the crock pot as well. I will put an entire bag of onions, chop them up, put them in the crock pot, put it on low overnight. Then when you come back, it'll be very soupy because the crock pot has the lid so it holds the moisture in. Then you can actually put them in a pan on the stove and again reduce, but cook them on a little bit higher heat and they'll get small and condensed the way that they should be. And once you've got those, you walk in the door and you say, oh, I'm too tired to cook, but I've got caramelized onions. Well, you can just throw those in a pan, throw in a few veggies, throw it on some pasta, and you got yourself a sauce. So it's a magic trick for making, again, complexity, that complexity that your mouth craves. And it adds sweetness, so then you can balance that with a little salt, a little acid. You've got it all there.
That's awesome. And Pamela has one other question. She doesn't like seaweed flavor. Do you have a recommendation for the miso soup in place of nori?
Or kombu. Instead of kombu, there's really not anything. I mean, it's not a pronounced flavor. If she hasn't had it before, maybe, you could try it. It's just one of the many flavors that are in the broth. But no, other than that, because it's interesting. I recently did a review of a book by a Buddhist nun, and she recommended that I buy powdered dashi, vegetarian dashi, which is the name for their broth, and it was all MSG. And so that's what, kind of the chemical version of it is. And it is an interesting thing to try just pure MSG. It has the mouthfeel, it has the umami, but it's really sort of weird. So kombu is really kombu. I'm just thinking, you could use some other vegetable or something for some other flavor, but the umami comes from the seaweed.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, can you let everyone know how to find you again and where to get your books and,
Yes.
how to hire you?
Yes. Well, here I am in Minneapolis, and I'm at robinasbell.com, so it's just my name.com. And I'm on Instagram as Robin Asbell. I'm on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I post cooking videos at Robin Asbell Plant-Based Chef. And so I've just recently started that. I think I have 10 or 11 now. And then I am available for recipe development and articles and, content and that sort of thing. And I'm on Twitter. I'm not there as much, but I am there. And so, yeah, you can always check me out on Facebook. I'm on there as a cookbook author. And this is my life, is making great tasting foods that are plant-based and trying to spread the word to people about how delicious it can be. And even people who eat meat like my food. So I figure I must have picked up a few tricks along the way.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to do 2 recipes today that I'm not sure your husband will eat with you. So it's all your food. So that's, I mean, that's not a terrible thing. Sometimes you don't want to share. So, but it sounds like you might just eat it anyway because he was polite for 20 years. I wouldn't have been so polite. So
I think he really thought maybe someday he'd change his mind, but I just thought that was hilarious. That he just kept trying.
It's very sweet and I dare say somewhat typical. So that would you allow a recorded demonstration for a church health ministry outreach? Pamela, I will definitely get in touch with you after this to give you an idea if you can use this for your church ministry outreach. We will be on YouTube with the recording, so you can go grab that, and I would give you permission to share this with as many people as you want to share it with so they can see and learn from Robin and learn about plant-based vegan eating, which I wouldn't say no to that. Robin, are you okay with that?
Sure. Spread the word. See if they'll buy a book.
Yes, buy books. Exactly. That would be the kicker. Promote the books. You can go to virtualvegfest.com and buy Robin's books. They're already up there waiting for you to take a look at them, which would be great. And again, next week, you're welcome, Pamela. Next week on Thursday, we have Dr. Judy Bragman at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then on Saturday, we have Celeste Rao, which is going to be really, really cool. Again, at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Super excited, always actually, about these live talks. And each week, it just keeps getting cooler and cooler. So as everyone, please wear a mask over your nose, under your chin. I want to add something new today. Poll workers, the election is coming up. Most people who work the polls tend to be in the older population, and it's more dangerous for them to be out because of COVID, the pandemic. If you have the ability, please go and sign up to work on election day. So we have more in every state in this country, in the United States. Every state possible, go and work the polls so there's enough of them open that there's not hours and hours and hours of time to vote, right? Some states have you can vote early. North Carolina is one of them. Not everybody has that option. So do make it so there's many polling places open as possible. We need people to work them. And of course, you get paid. So wear a mask, social distance, take care of yourselves. The only way you'll see both of us in person with a live veg fest or cooking demos where you can actually eat the food is if we all get on board with wearing a mask and getting rid of this pandemic as well as we can. So you do that, then we can all get back to a new normal, whatever that shall be, but it'll definitely be some new normal. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and please follow Robin on all her channels, and we appreciate you, and I look forward to actually meeting you in person because that'll be really cool. And I'm sure the dish won't be mushroom. Troy just started watching. He's a big mushroom eater. He's going to love this. He's going to probably make this for dinner. So thanks for popping in, Troy. And everyone else, have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.